Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Adamson. I'm the chairman of Forum Europe, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our third in the series of tech policy talks that Forum Europe is doing in collaboration with Qualcomm. The theme of today's discussion is investing in Europe's future, innovation, R&D, and talents. And we will start with a keynote address by Commissioner Mariya Gabriel, after which she and I will have a conversation, and then we'll proceed to a panel discussion who I'll introduce near the time. The kind of question we'll be addressing this afternoon include the following. How can the EU and member states develop a coherent approach to innovation, and how can we foster strong public-private partnerships? Will the development of a European innovation area create a more distinct European approach to R&D? What are the main tools available to tackle regional innovation disparities, whether because of human or economic capital flows? And how can infrastructure improvements such as wireless connectivity and 5G networks boost cross-border research cooperation and the attractiveness of Europe as an innovation destination? I think it's high time I passed over to the Commissioner. As you all know, Commissioner Gabriel is Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth. And last time we met in person, Mariya, I did point out to the audience that you've taken on the job of two commissioners from the previous commission, two male commissioners, I hasten to add at the time. So I just thought I'd remind today's audience that you are doing the job of two men in the current von der Leyen Commission. But enough from me. Over to you, Mariya.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, dear Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'm really delighted to exchange views with the participants of Tech Policy Talks who are joining this webinar, because we have a common mission to support innovators, entrepreneurs, and startups that are an integral part of the dynamic and developing innovation ecosystem in Europe. But let me start with a few remarks about innovation in Europe. Innovators and entrepreneurs are the main drivers of technological advances, economic growth, job creation, and social and economic progress and stability. For instance, the last numbers that we have from 2017, we have nearly 190,000 high-growth enterprises, and they accounted for more than 16 million jobs. European tech second is no longer driven by a handful of cities and a handful of countries. More European countries can say they have created a billion-dollar tech company. Universities across the region are creating more spin-off, and founders are choosing to create startups where they are living, further fueling local tech communities and setting the stage for the global category winners of tomorrow. In all cases, innovators and entrepreneurs do not work in isolation. They are part of local innovation ecosystems that are interconnected with other innovation ecosystems across Europe and the world. And the most successful innovation ecosystems are the ones which ensure access to resources, networks, capital, and talent, stimulates genuine multi-stakeholder involvement, and foster public-private and private-private collaborations. Now, to understand better the challenges of the European startup ecosystem, we can analyze them from the perspective of the three C's: connectedness, competencies, and capital. And following this approach, our analyses draw the following conclusions. First, in the area of connectedness, connections to the relevant people for the growth of innovative business is easier at the local and regional level than beyond regional or national borders. There is a problem to create connections among ecosystems at European level. Second, in the area of competence and talent, there is a need to increase innovation and entrepreneurial competence across all levels of society, including among public authorities. Hence, education aspects are essential for a future well-functioning innovation space in Europe. And finally, as regards access to capital, if the innovators live in one of the top innovation spots of the country, access to early-stage money will be easy. However, if they live in a second-tier city, the capacity to raise money will improve if they do it in another location, top-tier innovation pole in Europe. Therefore, it is important to address this geographical innovation divide across Europe and within countries. Now, the question is how to address these challenges. On our side, as the European Commission, we already promote some specific measures. First, the challenge of creating connections among innovation ecosystems. We'll address this challenge with our Innovation Ecosystem Program, with Horizon Europe Program, and with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. What is important is really to see how we can build synergies, how we can identify what are our assets and what are the next steps. Second, the challenge of increasing competence and talent, we have to address it by more synergies. Synergies between European education area, European research area, and digital education action plan. With the European education area, we have already a very good example with our European university alliances. They are innovative by essence, by nature, because we would like to have European universities that are working on a challenge-based approach, that are creating innovation ecosystems. And since the beginning, those alliances are working together with private sector, with small and medium enterprises. They are working with regions. So now the question it will be how we can really help them to grow, to scale, and to contribute for the creation of a European innovation area. And finally, the challenge of geographical innovation divide. In relation to access to capital, we would like to address this with our European Innovation Council and the widening part of Horizon Europe. We already heard a lot about European Innovation Council. That's our ambition, really, to have a unicorn factory in Europe with a unique combination of grants and equity investments. And I think that we have already some very encouraging results, because during the pilot phase, the beneficiaries of the EIC have already attracted over 4.3 billion euros follow-up investments. And besides this work of European Innovation Council, I would like to bring to your attention the importance of our new widening 2.0 part of Horizon Europe. Thank you very much, European Parliament. Miapetra is with us. We'll triple the budget for this to tackle this challenge about R&I divide. Previously in Horizon 2020, that was 1% of the budget. The next time that will be 3.3. Now I stay very open for your ideas. We have some mechanisms, they are working very well, but we need something new. And that's why we need this innovative spirit and new ideas. And I think that while a future European innovation area will provide, and that's our ambition, a well-structured framework for all these initiatives that I have just mentioned, it will also bring distinct elements like the focus on regional aspects and the use of synergies. Those are my last 2 points. I think that regions have to be at the heart of the European innovation area. And that is why, actually, I'm preparing a joint action plan together with Committee of the Region for the next 2 years, 4 main pillars, 26 actions. And our challenge is really to ensure that regions are all aware of all European funding programs, to include regional aspects in all European policies related to innovation, and to ensure that regions take advantage of the new synergies instrument between programs that will be at their disposal after 2021. And hand in hand with this approach, we need a European space for innovators, that they are making intensive use of synergies between Europe's regional and innovation policies. For instance, we have the smart specialization strategies, but we need new synergies. On one hand, Horizon Europe, on other with structural and cohesion funds, in order not only to continue to affirm our excellence, but to allow the access to the excellence and after to spread the excellence across Europe. So as conclusion, I would like to say that all these elements, it will be up to us to transform them into something tangible, something coherent, and to have this future European innovation area. My plea is really to build synergies with the European education and the European research area in order to serve the society. And that's why by developing an open single market for innovation in Europe, providing support and environment for startups to be formed and scale up, and at the same time with robust research and education basis, we really can bring Europe to a more resilient recovery and growth. And for me, I think that as a strong and united European innovation and startup ecosystem across Europe is our future. But that means that we need the help of European innovators. We need to talk each other, and we need to be as concrete as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariya. There's so much to talk about. We have a few minutes before we open to the panel. One question that springs to mind, could you talk a lot about the regions there toward the end of your intervention? And it's very clear in the communication that you produced about 6 weeks ago, there are quite significant regional disparities, as you know, across the European Union. The paper talks about the North and the West being ahead, the East sort of catching up, and the South in broad terms being behind. And the language is also used of being some countries lagging behind. So is part of the objective of the European Research Innovation Area and the enormous funds you have at your disposal now, is part of the objective is to try and bring some of these so-called, in your commission terms, lagging countries up to the level of the more so-called advanced countries?
Absolutely. That's our intention. And as I already said it, I think that we really use the last few months to better prepare the ground first, because we are working together with Elisa Ferreira, the Commissioner for Regional Development Fund, in order really to allow this time, for example, that Seal of Excellence is working, because we are distributing thousands of Seal of Excellence for a lot of projects and enterprises, but we know that on the ground this doesn't work. This time, what we would like to say to have is a very close cooperation with our regions in order to allow this project to be financed by other instruments without passing by all this entire procedure of notification or state aid rules. And that's why the action plan with the regions is so important. The same, I already mentioned, the European University Alliances. I think that if this time we decided that the European University Alliances will be innovative, they will create products and services, we need to involve our regions together. And final point, and the Miapetra is here, actually, we are negotiating with the European Parliament that it will be possible to transfer on a voluntary base 5% of the regional and structural funds to Horizon Europe for those countries that they are lacking capacity. The other and last element is really to think about concrete mechanism. For example, in the widening 2.0 strategy, we would like to strengthen the capacity of our national contact points. Let's be very honest. They don't have the same information at the same time, and the quality of the information is not the same. We need to increase their capacity to give advice. Second, we would like to propose the hop-on calls, where it will be possible for a country that is lagging behind or a region to join already well-established consortium in order really to acquire knowledge and expertise. That will be up to member states and to the European Parliament to finalize this, but together with my team, we definitely look at this direction, and tackling R&I divide is one of my biggest priority, because I fully believe that there is no possibility to affirm a European leadership if all our regions and all our member states, all our innovators are not involved in this.
Well, I know it's not just a question of money, obviously. As you say, you gave a very strategic overview vision of this European research area. At the same time, there are enormous funds now potentially available for this exciting new enterprise that you're championing, between the Recovery Fund, Horizon Europe, and the cohesion funds. But isn't there, without trying to sound too negative, at least the potential problem of some member states, as you talk about absorption, capacity, basically. So you give a lot of funds to certain member states who have historically been lagging behind, but they lack the ability, the capacity to know what to do with these substantial funds being made available.
Yes, and that's why in the European research area, our second priority is the access to excellence. Definitely, we need to work on this. The same, remember, with the European Innovation Council, now we are organizing regular webinars and trainings in order to allow more people to have their candidacy forward. And I think that it will be a huge challenge, really, to work on a common platforms, common networks where they have access to this information. And after, I fully believe in their capacity to transform this information into great projects. And we can already start to see that, because remember, the first direct, precise contribution to the Green Deal, it's again with research innovation. Actually, we have this Green Deal call for 1 billion open until 26th of January. We started to receive a lot of questions coming from different regions. And we are tackling stereotypes, because innovation is everywhere now in Europe. It's not only concentrated in few countries or in few regions.
Okay, I know you're very mindful of the fact that historically, at least, the Commission has been criticized for making it difficult to access much of these funds through many so-called bureaucratic procedures. Are you confident and are you optimistic that as time goes by and the Commission learns from experience, that you are progressively streamlining accessibility of fund applications so people are not discouraged from even applying in the first place?
I will continue to work on this, because definitely we need more rapid procedures, because we all know that for a startup there is critical time at the beginning. And now actually with the European Innovation Council, we are showing a good example. After, we need really to promote open access, open science. That's why you know that our platform with the different results and projects where they are, that will be completely transparent. Even for the next budget, we'll ask that by 30 days after the publication of the results, that should be accessible for everyone. Because here I think that Europe has a huge potential. We are producing an enormous quantity of data. But if we don't allow the access of our innovators to those data, that will be impossible to tell them Europe is your home. Here you can develop your ideas. And that's my main challenge. I fully believe that Europe is full of talent. Now the question is that all these talents are choosing Europe as their home.
And how do you see your own personal role as the commissioner responsible, Mariya? Because obviously there's a digital aspect of this, there's the green aspect of this, the flagship policies of the von der Leyen Commission. But in creating these synergies, in creating this ecosystem, or helping to build this ecosystem, to be more precise, how do you see your role as commissioner to make all this come together?
Well, first, we are already working extremely well, because it's definitely clear that we have the two main, digital and green transition. But we all know that without research, innovation and education, it will be quite difficult to achieve those ambitious goals. And that's why I very much appreciate the support that I receive from the other commissioners now. It's a question of coordination, of anticipation, and it's a question of recognition too for the work of all those that are contributing to this. So actually what we have seen is that there is a real project team approach. We are working together since the beginning to the end. But after, what is important is to see achievements that are as concrete as possible, because it's not enough for our innovators, entrepreneurs, just to tell them that we have ambitions and they have great perspectives. What is important for them is what I already mentioned, access to capital, to have this connectedness. And that's why I'm not talking about connectivity, remark this, and to promote their talent. I think that we are on a good way, but this time, synergy, it's not only a beautiful word. What I would like to see, and I think that all my fellow colleagues are aware of this, is that that's something operational. We need to transform this beautiful world in tangible results, and that's the main challenge now.
Have you seen, especially through the impact of the coronavirus, Mariya, a greater willingness of member states and by extension the European Parliament, of course, to embrace the same kind of enthusiasm and passion that you have, this new European research innovation area? Or are you still worried that there might be some parts of the EU who are less keen on the whole idea?
The positive thing is that thanks to this crisis, I think that there is more and more member states that are seeing this as an opportunity to invest in innovation, to invest in research and education. The European Parliament has always been a very strong advocate for this, and I'm very grateful to them. Now, what I would like to see is concrete steps, because they all somehow said it already, that for the recovery and resilience facility in their national strategies, innovation, research, and education will be key. But after what's happened in June, in July with the budget, and thank you very much, Parliament, for the negotiations 2 days ago, I stay very pragmatic. What I would like now to see is really concrete initiatives. We decided to invest a total an amount in the European research area. I would like to see that. We would like to have innovation ecosystems. Okay, let's see how we can build synergies between European Regional Fund, European Social Fund, and the possibilities offered by Horizon Europe program. And I'm quite encouraged. I must say that the last few months, I already have seen that there is growing demand, because I think that all our member states are aware that Europe should affirm a leadership in innovation, because we are leader in science. But now the question is to transform the excellent scientific results into innovation. That's why we need to work together with industry, with public institutions, with regions, and more that's on the top of the agenda, and I'm very glad. But we should continue to speak with one voice, to raise the issue and to ask for concrete actions.
Okay, we're going to bring this little fireside chat, Mariya, to a temporary end for the moment, because I need to bring in the panel. Luckily and thankfully for us, you're going to stay for a while and listen to the contributions of the panelists. I know you have to leave around 4:45 rather. So we'll make sure you come back into the conversation before you have to leave us. So thank you for the moment, Mariya. And I now would like to introduce the panel. Our panel is comprising Donald J. Rosenberg, Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Qualcomm; Miapetra, Kumpula-Natri, a member of the European Parliament from Finland; Luísa Henriques, Coordinator for Research in Space, the Portuguese Permanent Representation to the European Union; Bruno Liebhaberg, Director General of CERRE. And I believe we're joined also by Cristian-Silviu Buşoi, member and chair of the ITRE committee of the European Parliament. He may be joining us in a moment. Let me briefly explain. Mariya can stay for a while, so we'll start with the panelist interventions, but I may interrupt the flow of the discussion briefly to give Mariya an opportunity to respond to what she has heard before she has to leave us. So let me start with you, Don, if I may. First of all, I'd like you to react in broad terms to what you've heard from the Commissioner. And also, on top of that introductory question, if I may, Don, how do you see, from the private sector vantage point, how these recovery plan funds should be used to advance digitalization in Europe and create these much-needed job opportunities? Don, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. I have to say, I'd rather just continue to listen to the Commissioner interject here with any great thoughts. I really mean that. I was thinking, as Commissioner spoke, I've been going back and forth to Europe for 35 years. I've been to Brussels. I can't count the number of times I've visited member states. And for, I don't know, at least the last dozen or so years, the conversation has typically been about how can Europe innovate? How can Europe become a center of innovation? What are the proper steps that we might be able to take? For example, I've often heard, to duplicate Silicon Valley. I'm not sure you want to duplicate Silicon Valley, by the way. And I want to point out that Qualcomm is a tech company that's constantly confused with being in Silicon Valley. We are not. We're in San Diego. That's one of the differences between us and our friends in Silicon Valley. I'll get to another one a little later. But back to my point, I am so encouraged by what I hear and read. From the start, I was looking at the new industrial strategy for Europe, which was adopted in March. And even though we, of course, are in the middle of this terrible pandemic worldwide, March was kind of the beginning, or at least close to the beginning of that, and yet you were already thinking ahead. And the kinds of things that are included in there, the things that are discussed in the European research area proposals, things that the commissioner has said in the past and said today, are all so encouraging to me, because I think there are concrete plans contained in there to do the kinds of things like I've never seen done before, that really focus the right attention on becoming autonomous, getting to that point of sovereignty. And it's interesting, autonomy, of course, is a singular term, but you can't be autonomous without the connection and the synergies, as the commissioner said, with so many in the ecosystem. And that's, of course, member states, but it's also industry. It's, as the commissioner said again, universities. I mean, people don't think a lot about the fact that Europe, I think, has an enormous percentage of the world's research institutes. And just to connect you to our Qualcomm experience, I think, as you all know, we consider ourselves and have considered ourselves since 1985, the beginnings of the company, as a kind of research institute. We're still 70% of our employees are engineers. We spend a lot of time researching and developing ideas which turn into technologies, which, by the way, I wrote about this in the Parliament magazine a couple of issues ago. Europe was the center of standardization. It's Europe's approach to standardization in my industry that has pretty much been the foundation of the growth in this industry. We like to say at Qualcomm that we were a big part of that foundation, and I think we were. But without the standards process that was developed in Europe, which is, as you know, a process by which thousands of people get together and through consensus reach conclusions about the direction of design and technology. That's a model, by the way, for how you can move into the future. As I mentioned, we're in the pandemic. Well, I think every crisis creates opportunity. And we have enormous opportunities to take advantage of what we're seeing, resulting from our ability to adapt to environments like this. And it happens to be spectacularly good for Qualcomm, and I think for the world, that we're in the beginnings of this new generation of mobile technology. 5G, you've all heard about and read about, and I often say I go to Washington and all I have to do is step off the plane and say 5G and everybody wants to talk to me, but everybody doesn't know what 5G capabilities are. We talk about them at a high level, but they are going to be the capabilities of 5G are going to be so important to the kinds of things the commissioner's goals are set at. The connectivity, the way we can, the fact that I'm here talking to you in this group seamlessly is the result of wonderful communications connectivity, which is only going to get better in the 5G environment. And so to your specific question, Paul, I just got so excited by listening to this track. But to your specific question, look, I think certainly in my area, how do you support funding of 5G infrastructure? Very, very critical. You support the kinds of things the commissioner was talking about, putting funds in the right place to motivate innovation, to incentivize research and development. We often talk about the fact, and I'm not just making this up, I've made multiple speeches over the years. We, Qualcomm, talk about the fact that we couldn't have gotten to where we are without investors who took advantage of the fact that we had great research and development that was going to lead to technology that would be protected by intellectual property rights. So I want to throw in one point about intellectual property rights. They remain key to incentivizing investment, not just government investment, but private investment in innovation and research and development. And that must continue. And so I hope it does. I hope that's a big part of it. It certainly seems to be. And we are partnering with so many elements of the ecosystem new elements. You look at the amount of work we're doing in the automotive field, which is a key area of interest to Europe. That's going to be enormously helpful to the process of bringing Europe to a digital autonomy and the kind of sovereignty they're looking for. You look at 5G's capabilities with how it will impact industry. Private industry is going to be incredibly aided by the capabilities of private networks, for example, and the operations of industry. And that's a not traditional industry as it exists in Europe is going to be aided by the capabilities of 5G technology. So I'll stop there.
Okay.
I hope I can hear more from the rest of the panel, because this has been, and the Commissioner in particular, because this has been, as I say, an extremely encouraging episode in my experience with Europe.
Thank you, Don. I do have more questions for you, but I'll leave them for a moment because I want to make sure we have as many panelists taking part before Mariya has to leave us.
Yes.
In the meantime, welcome, Cristian. I see you've joined us. Thank you very much for being here. I know you're a busy chap, but we're delighted you've been able to stay. Do you happen to know how long you can stay with us?
Thank you so much. At 4:45 ITRE committee, the committee that I'm chairing, Industry, Research and Energy, the committee extremely important so for the research part, and we have an excellent cooperation with Commissioner. We'll start.
Okay, so that's perfect news. Well, I'm going to move rapidly on to Miapetra, Kumpula-Natri. Thank you so much for being here, Miapetra. I'd like to point out to the audience that not only you've been an MEP for over 6 years, but you were a member of the Finnish Parliament for 11 years. And last but not least, you have an educational background in engineering. So I think nobody's better qualified to take part in this debate than you. So first of all, what are your views of what Mariya has been saying, and what do you think the role of the European Parliament is in this debate going forward? Miapetra.
Thank you, and I appreciate speaking the same panel with my chair as an ITRE member, and then also my commissioner as a research and a good friend. Good to see you in the screen, if not physically in Brussels for so long time. My comment for the commissioner that I love the enthusiasm and also appreciate, as the previous speaker said, that we are really trying to deliver now as a Europe, not sector by sector, but to see the life and future. So it is not functioning, the politics, in the way that you have silos and then you do the research, or you make an innovation, or then you make the digital investment, or you solve the climate. So that's what I appreciated, and it was really the last commission that wanted to break the silos with the vice chair system, and now I think it's deeper in the DNA of all the actors, and I hope we can deliver in the Parliament and other sides as well. Then to squeeze my comments to the real things, that if I wish I could ask more, is that expertise needs to be there as well, because we will not solve the cancer, nor we will take a flight to moon if we just think that everywhere happens the same. But then we do have what I very much emphasize also, that when we talk about the innovations, or when we talk about the AI, which I'm now also working in the Parliament Special Committee, then I see that this has to be embedded in all the sectors, all the corners, all the countries. But I still want to see Europe being the home for the new Nobel laureates, and the very excellence competition needs to remain in the core, so that we can really find the real best ones also on the European continent. So even though we are happy about a few billions result, adding the money for the R&D funding, it's still fair to say that we are not delivering in the global competition, so we have to be double wise, and the structures must be very efficient. As we compare that, just 20 years ago, European share for R&D investments were 25%, and today, in already 5 years, they were 20%, and we know that we are not doing that well if China even passed European Union. And now, due to the fact that also Great Britain is soon out, that will also put the figures worse. So after this sad part, I think that it is even more important to the clever things, and I would do the 3 following. The make the data flow, and I'm just today finished the amendments for ITRE committee on the data strategy that I'm rapporteur. It is so important to put the things right. Whatever sector you would imagine that, of course, we can now create a register, like my prime minister wrote in Politico this morning, that to make possible the people movement from country to country, if they are vaccinated or if they are tested negative. We don't have systems. We cannot combine that information. We do not have registers. We don't have, and technically it should be there. But then when you collect the data, you don't have standards, and then you don't have interfaces that could make it possible. So even I think the data strategy is a vision, it's a concrete tools, and then sometimes, you know, it is just how to make the data registers and data sets to be used for. So the flow of data and AI will give a good one. Then infrastructure, that is of course needed, and then we have good things going on there. The future technologies embedded to our strategies, and then the third part, the skills and research needs to be in every level. So I really ask for the high level research to happening, and then I call for the innovations. But if I may add, as this is also Qualcomm present, I think we need a lot of software engineering to be able to create the ecosystems, because we too often see that the train is gone, all the GAFAM is taking care of everything, and we don't have room. But still, if we think that we will digitalize every sector, farmers, research is of course going on the different sector, but really embedded. We need a lot of skilled engineers to do that, a lot more, and take it on every sector of European industries and also services.
Before I turn to you, Luísa, I need to give the floor. I want to give the floor to Mariya because she has to leave us in about 3 minutes. I did say I'd be very keen for her to react briefly to what she's heard from the European Parliament, obviously Miapetra, but also from industry in the shape and form of Don. Any sort of parting comments and reactions on your side, Mariya, before you leave us?
Well, first of all, I think that we are all on the same line. Thank you very much, Don, for your comments. I think that now what we have to say is that when we talk about innovation, we have to consider all paths towards innovation, from education to innovation, from research to innovation. And Miapetra already mentioned some good examples that we need these skilled people. The second, I think that we really need to face the reality. We are talking about strategic autonomy, more and more about technological sovereignty, but that means that we have really to build synergies and ecosystems. And I think that means that we need to stay very focused on real problems. And maybe that's a surprise, but I don't consider that it's up to the European Commission officer to decide where and how to invest. I think that our partnerships, first of all, should be strategic, impact-oriented. After that, we have to define the targets together with the private sector. That's not always the case. And at the same time, to promote an open innovation approach, big companies, but to take into consideration small and medium enterprises, startups, universities, research institutes. And I think that here we have some very good examples. In European Research Area communication, for the first time, when we are talking about how to translate scientific results and the excellence of these results in Europe into products and services, we decided now to work on a joint roadmaps between academia and industry. It's first time that we are proposing that, and I think that we really need a very rapid mapping where in Europe, how to start, because yes, we have world-class institutions, world-class infrastructures. That's one of the achievements of ERA, but immediately after, not to stay at this communication and dialogue phase. We need to move forward because we already have a lot. And I fully agree, Don, that we need to incentivize investment. I think that actually with Horizon Europe program, we have at our disposal some good tools. Now the question is how to turn them into something tangible. And Miapetra raised very rightly the question of the flow of data and the European data spaces. We don't have one question. We even don't have a digital education data space. We don't have a digital education cloud. We don't have a European cloud on different strategic sectors. So I think that this time we should use all these funding and instruments at our disposal in order to encourage our innovators that it's possible to realize their ideas in Europe, because we are able to change our approaches and just to live with our times. That's, I think, that our entrepreneurs, our big and small companies, our talents want to see with us.
Thank you so much, Mariya. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your keynote. Thank you for your little chat we had just now, and thank you especially also for staying for the first part of this panel. I think everybody you say is more or less on the same page. We'll see if the second half of the panel can confirm that. Thank you very much for your time, Mariya.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Now we're going on now to the sort of second half of our panel. Before I give the floor finally to Luísa, just to remind those of you watching and listening that there is a chat function. If you'd like to put questions to any of the panelists, please use the chat function you'll find at the bottom of your screen, and I'll do my very best to accommodate as many of the questions coming through as possible. If there are no or few questions, I can promise you I have many questions of my own. So now then, Luísa, well, as we all know, Portugal takes over the presidency of the European Union on the 1st of January, so we're even more excited and interested to hear what you have to say. Luísa, over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting us, and I'm saying thank you in the name of my ambassador to the permanent representation of Portugal to the Union. And we are very glad to participate in this talk, which has a very exciting title for us because it's broadly aligned with our program for the presidency, as that we are going to take over 1st of January 2021. In fact, for us, research and development, talents and innovation are core elements to invest for a better tomorrow, which we want to be more inclusive, greener, and definitely more resilient. So in broader lines, Portuguese presidency is very much aligned with the importance of investing in innovation, R&D, and talents. So as you might know, we are part of the trio of the presidencies. We are a very strong trio. We are working together. So we are working with Germany, Portugal, and Slovenia for this 18 months period that will end in the December 2021. I will focus mainly in research and innovation dimension, and the trio as selected as, and the Commissioner has already mentioned, as overarching priority the renewal of the European research area. You may know that European research area was created 20 years ago in Lisbon during our presidency. So Portugal, we are very much attached to this concept. And for us, the renewal of this European research area, which includes innovation, as very well the Commissioner Gabriel has explained, has been fascinating tasks because we have been working very closely with the Commission and the Member States to develop new visions, objectives, and priorities. So now at the Council, we are preparing our policy response to the communication of the Commission on the ITRE, providing a ITRE policy agenda to combine with the roadmap that has been proposed. We have been talking here a lot on infrastructures, on domains like AI, need for digitalization, ecosystems, but Portugal would like to focus on something that moves all of these, which are the people, which are the researchers. So we want to take over the first priority of the European research area to create attractive research careers and better conditions to our researchers across Europe. This is a way as well to achieve brain circulation in a way that, as UNESCO defined it, as to achieve a better balance between the brain drain that all of us are suffering, but as well the brain gain. So we want a kind of a balance between the flow so all Europe can strive for having a good research and innovation ecosystems. And in this way, with better research careers and better working conditions, we can attract talent to Europe, because that's a way as well to make Europe, as you mentioned in your questions, an attractive innovation destination. It's in our roadmap that we have been developing, we consider essential to start by create a profession of research career, profession of researchers at European level, and making it part of the European framework for professions to facilitate the interoperability. With our European research area, had created an internal market for research. Researchers are free to move like knowledge or technologies. And research, by its end, is global in nature, so researchers are mobile. They are one of the most mobile people. So we are facing a kind of mismatching between the traditional careers and welfare conditions that prevail today with the new dynamics and this new layer of mobile researchers that need to have careers that can be changing from one sector to the other, that can have diverse career paths, and that can facilitate intersectoral mobility. Because if we want to mobilize all the networks, if we want to work better between the public sector and the business sector, it's important to have mobility of researchers from one sector to the other. And that is important for the researchers not to lose because they are moving. They should accumulate and be assessed positively by that move. So our aim is to achieve sustainable careers, reduce the precarity, and achieve better welfare conditions for the research community. And we want to provide kind of a structural change because, as you all might know, research careers, the European dimension of research careers, have been since the foundation of ITRE an aim, an objective to achieve. Since 2003, it's an old objective, and we need to do something to change because there are challenges that need to address, and the researchers really need to have their sustainable careers and have jobs secured. So we are approaching this in a holistic approach, combining all the incentives and measures within the European framework for research careers. And with all these elements, we want to provide direction until 2024 to achieve that. Just two other small comments. We agree that the European research area includes innovation, like Horizon Europe includes innovation, and the Commission really emphasized the role of the European Innovation Council and European innovation ecosystems. They are really important programs, but we see as well as a continuous as from basic research until the valorization of the results in the economy. And Portugal really thinks that research and innovation are collaborative by nature. They are done in networks that should be open and inclusive. Just a small addition regarding the partnerships. That's a file that we are expecting to handle in our presidency, and we have been very much engaged in streamlining the partnerships landscape, which everything is now the principles and the criteria and the common rules are enshrined in Horizon Europe. And we consider partnerships as an important European added value because they are possible because the European research area exists. And in that regard, we will do particular attention to openness and inclusiveness, especially regarding SMEs and startups. And finally, just a last point is that Portugal will give strong emphasis on digital. And we want to mention that we pay considerable attention to digital infrastructure that is important to deploy across Europe, to approaching the peripheries to the center, because the digital infrastructure will reduce inequalities and promote opportunities to all regions in Europe. So thank you very much, and that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Luísa. I have many questions for you, but in the interest of time, I'm going to pass on to Cristian, but I will come back and all of you who've spoken so far with the second round of questions. Cristian, I think you might have missed Mariya's intervention at the beginning because you were busy doing other stuff, but you're chairman of the lead committee, the main committee responsible for oversight over the ERA, European Research Area. How do you see your role going forward, since now the research area proposal is now a reality? And can I also add on to the question, if I may, Cristian? Mariya mentioned and other speakers have mentioned that this idea, we talk a lot about strategic autonomy, technological sovereignty, digital sovereignty, that kind of thing. At the same time, as other speakers have said so far, the research area, it's a global community, and researchers move freely around the globe. Is there not so much a tension, but is there a slight contradiction between that? Over to you, Cristian.
Thank you so much. Well, for the committee that I'm chairing, for ITRE committee, research is extremely important, and we look also in the context of the challenges that we are facing. Some of the challenges we should take into consideration, and we should overcome, like the pandemic, or climate change. Others, of course, are the challenges that we need to overcome in order to be more competitive, and this is our strategic goal of digitalizing European society, European economy, and we cannot achieve all our goals. We cannot fight against our challenges if we are not invest a lot in research and development. So the answer for many of the challenges that we are facing is research, innovation, and new technologies. And for us, for instance, it was extremely important, and we are very happy to see this week the agreement reached on new budget. Of course, we are not the ambitions that we settled and the proposal the European Parliament made for Horizon Europe, but still it's a little bit better that was proposed in July, and this is a good sign that research will be important in the near future. It is not an overstatement to say that the prosperity of Europe's future, whether in social, economic, or health terms, depends on research and innovation. We also are now facing not only the challenges, the medical challenges posed by the pandemics, and the need to save lives, to have control as much as we can on this pandemic from the medical point of view, but we will face soon the economic problems posed by the pandemics or triggered by the pandemics. And here also, we believe, and we said many times in our dialogues with commissioners, with other important stakeholders in ITRE committee, that more investment in research can be a driver for the recovery. Of course, with a focus on innovation and digitalization. That's why our ambition to really build a European research area, a genuine one, and also put it in a global context. Because coming to your question, I don't see a conflict. I see an opportunity in order to put this in a global context and to strengthen our good ties and good cooperation. And before everything, to strengthen our good relationship also in the research area with our main strategic partner, which is United States. Here, many opportunities will arise. Of course, we have also a competition. Of course, there is each part has an interest, but I believe that it's a ground for good cooperation, good partnership, and a lot of synergies. So we need the R&I to help us prevent and fight future crises. We need to develop tools that are adapted to our globalized world. This means investing in better monitoring, developing more efficient early warning systems, and of course, we need innovation to proof our health system and make our health system more resilient. I will also briefly touch the area of health, not only because it's a very, very actual discussion, but also because I'm the rapporteur for EU for Health, our next European health program, 2021-2027. I presented today my report in the plenary, and tomorrow we'll have the final vote. Then we'll go into negotiations with the Council. With this program, with what will be Horizon Europe, and especially the mission for cancer, but with all the other incentives that we can give to the researchers from the pharma industry and from the medical field, the academia, the universities, the hospitals, our brilliant researchers and our forces at the pharma industry level will have better opportunities and better tools to find better treatment for cancer, for other non-communicable diseases, chronic diseases, but also to deliver on vaccines for now and for the future pandemics in order to prevent the spread of viruses. So far, at least for the corona, you know well that this week brought us another very good news, not only the increase of the budget for Horizon Europe, for EU for Health, but also the first success in the vaccination field. And this was also with an important support from European institutions. And here the involvement of Mariya Gabriel, of Commissioner Gabriel, was crucial. And I was happy to congratulate her and Commissioner Kyriakides for helping all the projects and also contributing to this project in order to have a vaccine as soon as possible, more likely in early spring. We need a strong partnership with the industry, and I paid a lot of attention on the intervention of the Qualcomm representative, and in general, we are very, 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 very sensitive to the input coming from industry, not only in the digital area, but also our medical area, but everywhere, because without this partnership, it would be difficult to really tailor the support, money, budget, or policy support for each sector. We would like to become more competitive. We talked earlier, and we'll talk a lot about our strategic need for be autonomous in many areas and also to be more competitive in other areas. We need a robust industrial strategy. We need a more competitive and more resilient industry. Of course, here it's not enough to invest some European money. we have a lot of money, not only for research. A lot of what will be next generation, the resilience facility, will go to the technologies of the future, because a lot of these funds should go in the direction of Green Deal projects and in the direction of digitalization. But we need also the right policies and the right incentives. And here we need to learn from our industries, from those which are based in Europe, but not only, also from our partners from United States, from other parts of the world, which have a strong presence in Europe, or they would like to develop their presence in Europe, in order to see how very concretely we could support them.
Thank you very much, Cristian. This is very frustrating. The more people speak and say such interesting things, the more questions I have, but I have to bite my tongue because time is of the essence. I will now move on to Bruno. I should point out to people watching us, Bruno, that I think your career, your European career at least, started very illustriously in the cabinet of Jacques Delors in the mid-80s. So you have a certain, should we say, historical perspective. And one question I'd like to ask you, I'm sure you want to react to what you heard from the Commissioner, is given your historical and your long experience in European affairs, are you optimistic about this latest iteration of a European research area producing the results that people like Mariya so keenly want?
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for having me. Well, you know, I don't want to look like the ancestors you present me. That would not be fun. But it happens that indeed I happen to have to rewrite, as Jacques Delors' advisor on R&D issues in his first cabinet, I had to rewrite the introduction to the first, or the foreword to the first framework program that we came up with in 1985. So yes, indeed, I have seen a number of those programs, and clearly you will not be surprised if I say that, like you, who's, if I remember well, also who were there already at the same time as I was, that I'm definitely optimistic, as I've been all my life, about the path of European integration. In this case here, I'd like to look at innovation and R&D through the broader prism of competitiveness, because I think we'll all agree that success in innovation and R&D is indeed very much related to an adequate approach to competitiveness. And I think that Christian Buşoi, the ITRE chair, emphasized that again. And I think that the drivers to being successful in innovation and competition are manifold. Let me just mention rapidly a few of them. Deepening the single market, the development of a culture of risk in business, where, you know, a culture where failure should not anymore be a social stigma, the promotion of venture capital, setting priorities on education and a talent nurturing policy, as Mariya Gabriel mentioned. Smooth industrial relations are also part of the equation, as, of course, public support to R&D and innovation. And one of the reasons why I'm optimistic is when I see the 20% goal for digital spending in the next generation EU post-COVID recovery program. I think this is clearly positive from an innovation boosting perspective. Other drivers promoting dual use of R&D. Paul, we were mentioning that already at Delors' time, the fact that the US have dual use R&D, which is heavily subsidized, and we don't have that. Targeted use of public procurement, and a realistic trade policy, and eventually sound regulation and competition policy. So the many drivers to innovation and competitiveness, I mentioned 10, but they can be, I think, more. And that's my first point. My first point is that if Europe aims to improve its innovation and competitiveness performance, it must urgently do what the US and China, but also some of our own member states have been, I'm looking at Miapetra, Finland, have really understood that we need to adopt a unified, integrated approach, which, in my view, should take the form of a comprehensive EU industrial strategy. I see with some relief when I read the communication that was published by the Commission last March, that unlike its predecessors, the Commission is now addressing this. My second point, and that will be the last one because I'd like to stick to the 3 minutes, it's about sound regulation and competition policy. I think that this is also one of the drivers to innovation and competitiveness that I mentioned 1 minute ago. When we look at the objectives of regulations, of antitrust, merger control, state aid policies, one thing immediately of promoting competition, optimizing the welfare of users and consumers, upholding citizens' democratic rights, and safeguarding the integrity of the single market. But this is clearly not sufficient. I think that more than ever, competition policy and regulation should also promote innovation and investment and not impact innovation and investment negatively. And I think more than ever, but this is also something we were talking about 35 years ago, to take special account of the specificities of startups and SMEs. We know that those smaller enterprises, those startups, are often at the forefront of transforming innovations into business successes. And for instance, I think that it would be really unfortunate if the new rules to be provided for in the forthcoming Digital Markets Act were to negatively impact the EU app developing community, which is made essentially of SMEs, which rely on the larger platforms to deliver their services. Regarding regulation in particular, we have a great record, and Don Rosenberg rightly mentioned it. We have a great record in making innovation which we can export, of setting standards, on leading the way in these. I think one of our additional features is the fact that we put emphasis on principles, values, ethic-based rules with a forward-looking approach to innovation-centric industries. For instance, I interviewed Commissioner Renders a few weeks ago and asked him what would for him be success at the end of his commission mandate in 2024. And he said increased development of ethical AI in Europe to match the amount of deployment we already have in the region. So to conclude, I think that sound competition policy and regulation and the so-called Brussels effect of setting standards to export and lead the way of global competitiveness, those are key to encouraging innovation into the EU.
Thank you, Bruno. We're going to go round now for a second round of questions, if you like. Just remind the audience before I do so that they're very welcome to forward some questions or even comments to the panel via the chat function if they choose to do so. But as I said earlier, I have plenty of questions of my own. I'm going to turn back to you, Don. You've heard a number of speakers talk about the importance of, the essential need for public-private sector partnerships, and the role of industry is obviously critical in all this. And Cristian mentioned that specifically just now, and also the need to nurture and build on transatlantic relations, since obviously you are a US company. Do you agree with that? I mean, in the sense that it's obviously an obvious question, but do you sense that the door is open to partnership from your perspective?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I appreciate all the remarks thus far. It's been really educational and again heartening to me to listen to this discussion. Just Bruno's last comments about the need for careful competition policy, of course, is something I agree with. I've been on that point for a long time. I don't at all disagree with the need for regulation. I just think we need to be careful about how much regulation we are imposing on companies who are trying to take advantage of the opportunity to innovate. And I agree on the small and medium enterprises, and the startups need that kind of incentive, as I said before, and it can't be inhibited. We at Qualcomm, of course, forever have been engaged in partnerships And yes, across the Atlantic, even today, even more today, in a sense, in the 5G era, we're partnering with so many companies in Europe, whether it's Bosch and Siemens in Nuremberg, whether it's BMW and Daimler, Ericsson and Nokia, of course, have been fairly traditional partners and allies of Qualcomm, and we continue to agree on policy with them and partner with them. And of course, all of the carriers, whether it's Vodafone or Deutsche Telekom, we are constantly engaging with them, and in particular now, since there's a lot of focus on this concept of open RAN or virtual RAN, which would replace the more traditional proprietary vertical base stations and network infrastructure, which we've all talked about. It's interesting, by the way, just as going on a tangent here a little bit, I know there's been lots of discussions about national security from a U.S. perspective and concerns in many of the member states about the existing infrastructure environment, in particular because Huawei has pretty much captured that arena, and therefore there's a move toward this concept, as I said, of virtual or open RAN. I want to say, putting aside their national security issues, whether there are or aren't, it is a natural evolutionary course in my view to move from the traditional proprietary vertical model in infrastructure to this open model, and it once again talks to the benefits and advantages of an open model. And as you know, the infrastructure that is now being worked on, we are participating in, bringing our technology and expertise to it, and it will allow for competition. It will allow for much more of a software controlled environment. It will allow for or inhibit the ability of any particular vendor to control the network individually. And so these are all good things, and it will operate quite well and quite efficiently in the 5G era. So yes, we're a huge proponent of partnerships, of working together, of the synergies that are created from those kinds of things, and we will continue to press forward in that area.
Thank you. Maybe I'm guilty of neglecting slightly the talent aspect of the theme of today's webinar. So I'd like to go back to that, if I may, and turn to you, Miapetra. Especially given your background in engineering, you heard Luísa talk about the need to nurture attractive and sustainable research careers, but maybe further upstream education schools for. Is Europe doing enough to promote STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics education in schools, and in particular empowering girls and young women to take these career paths? Miapetra.
No, and there's not too much, not too much that we can do, because that is still the education is a national issue. So I can tell you a lot of experience and studies about the Finnish educational system. So, but what I also learned in so many international talks on this one, that it is not transferable. You cannot change the system as such immediately. We have like started to think of and practiced also the exporting the good Finnish schooling systems to some rich Asians, for example. But then it is also that is very cultural, and this is kind of this soft law thinking together, learning from each other, which is quite important, and by examples and having exchanging ideas. So, but then generally, when talking about the digital skills and needs, I think it's most important to understand that it goes through everything. It is the kind of thinking. I also get to read some children books, and it was a praised book by one entrepreneur who then said that this is a coding book for children, and it was only logical thinking, and I was so relieved that I can follow that part, because my engineering is for NMT time, so I do my best to understand the 6G now studies in the old university or quantum computing whatsoever. But then having the attractions for the girls, it comes with the role models, and there are nice networks having women in tech and take this gender by planning. And if I just say, because I sometimes like, that's maybe not politician part, but engineering part of me, that's what you really mean when you say the nice word as a politician. You can design things to be motivating for girls and boys. There was this element of AI when Finland had the presidency. We didn't have any gadgets or gifts or presents, but we then donated the Helsinki University, Aalto University planned elements of AI online course. So you can study free in all your national European languages, the course online. And that was planned from the beginning so that it's attractive for females and males. And the results are remarkable. In the Nordic countries, it's 50% women who did the course. But that was also when they were advertising it, they took the female dentist, then they took the student. And so everything was thought through, not only we technological people among us, but then really planned for that. And what the remarkable thing is that year and 2 years after that, when it was taught at the school, and then it was like a spread information, also the applicants for computer science in Aalto University, the number of female applicants doubled. So there are ways if we want to design it, but there not too much we can do. Last mandate, we sent a letter together with Gabriel also she was a digital commissioner to all the member states to take on board more females to think about it, to do it. So leading by example is a good one. But then also I want to emphasize that we have expertise, we have maybe talked enough about the school kids and possibilities to learn STEM in the educational system, but I still call for real engineers and software engineers who can then be actually developing the hospitals and transport systems. So it needs to be embedded in every single company, actually, the possibilities. For example, to understand what data they have at the moment, how they make usage of it. If you don't have your own engineer, you're too much linked to only use Microsoft systems, for example, then you are maybe too lazy to develop and take everything out. So that could be then still be more planned as a strategical idea.
Okay, thank you, Miapetra. Turning to you now, Luísa. Many questions for you, but I'll have to just pick one. You probably heard me ask Mariya Gabriel, because it's actually mentioned there in the Commission's communication, this issue about regional innovation disparities. Is that there is almost like a north-south divide, with the Eastern and Central Europe being sort of somewhere in the middle. First of all, do you agree with that assessment? Because the Commission does say that it is proposing in its communication that, I'm quoting here, those member states lagging behind the EU average in research and innovation investment over GDP direct their efforts to increase their investments by 50% in the next 5 years. Is that a realistic objective from a member state point of view?
Yeah, regarding the innovation divide, I think this has been a very hot discussion in the last years. And I think we need to look at it from two dimensions. One is the dimension that at national level, we need to improve, all countries need to improve their own research systems, taking into account conditions for research. For instance, some of the countries need to improve salaries for their researchers, or some need to open up better their institutions. But there is as well, and there is a need for investment, as you say, and it's important to have targets, even if they are voluntary, in order to give direction to the countries that more investment is needed in research. And we think if you have a target, for instance, like the old Barcelona target of the 3% of investment in the GDP, which we have not yet attended, it was supposed to be there in 2020, it has, for instance, protect investment in research and innovation during the crisis. And I can give the example of my country. It allowed to protect the investment and to reduce as much as possible the budget cuts in research and innovation. But there is another dimension in the innovation divide, which is the need to open up the networks. You mentioned, Bruno, the framework program, and I had the pleasure to participate in the evaluation of the first ISPRI 1 program and how it was important in creating the framework program and all the networks of collaboration that we have. And studies shows that most of the networks have been passing from one framework program to the other. So there are core elements in these networks, and there are difficulties in newcomers to enter these networks. And this has been evaluated by for instance, regarding the ex-post evaluation for FP7. They were saying that the networks were closed and they were resisting to open up to newcomers. And the effort that we have been doing at Council level, and it is clear in Horizon Europe, is that we need to open up. Because if you enter into a network of excellent, composed by excellent institutions, your learning curve is much, much faster, and you are starting to integrate and you become partner. And therefore, so the networks expand all over Europe. So for us, the innovation divide is something that is being done at two levels: national level, more investment; at European level, creating the conditions that there is not so much concentration in few countries, or few, it's not even countries, in few research organizations which have the conditions to attract researchers. That's why we are mentioning brain circulation, because researchers move because they want to have jobs. Researchers move because they want to have access to better infrastructures. Researchers move because they want to have better salaries and better conditions for their families. So the importance to create good research systems across Europe will benefit all Europe, based, of course, in the principle of excellence. We are saying that we all need to expand and achieve excellence. So for us, it's not kind of having a kind of a first division type of system, second division type of systems. We want to bring everyone to the same level, on excellence level. So it's a work that we have been doing. I think Horizon Europe has all the instruments that can make that change. And I'm very confident, and as Commissioner Gabriel was mentioning, the widening 2.0 strategy and all the new instruments that are within the Advancing Europe package in Horizon Europe, that will, I'm confident, make a change, and we will kind of reduce this disparity between countries and regions.
Thank you, Luísa. Moving swiftly on now to Cristian, and then last question I'll pose to Bruno. Cristian, if I may, I'd like to press you more what you said toward the end of your initial intervention about the role of industry and the openness of the public sector to work alongside the private sector. And Bruno had this long shopping list of things that Europe has to kind of address if it wants to be as effective as it wants to be, including this kind of culture of risk or risk aversion, maybe. Are you, from your perspective, optimistic that now is a moment where these cultural, if you want to call them that, differences between Europe and certainly the United States are going to be a thing of the past, and that Europe will start embracing this innovation culture, not just in sort of pure academic research terms, but also in innovation and application terms, commercial terms?
I'm not very sure about this. Of course, the model developed by United States during decades, which is a highly competitional, oriented very much versus industry needs, oriented to profits with high private investment, with not much regulations, was a model that looked very successful, at least in some of the areas. On the other hand, Europe also has a lot of good success stories of a more balanced situation between public and private, between essential research and not necessarily research oriented only for the industry needs, but also basic research, which is also extremely important. But I see that at least in some areas we could and we should be very much inspired by the United States model. And I truly believe that, for instance, in order to reach our ambitions on the Green Deal, in order to make our continent carbon emission free, neutral, from this point of view, we need to go a little bit and to invest a little bit more and to build better partnership with industry, to give better incentive, to change a little bit our mentalities, and to be a little bit more inspired by United States. Of course, by what they did in other areas, because for the moment on the climate change is a big hope with the new reality in United States. But of course, we'll have to see also what will be the concrete plans. So I believe that we'll migrate a little bit on this kind of model. This is something which is very clear for me. But we'll keep also some of the models that were successful and are used with, and which are part of our way of doing things. And it's not necessarily bad. It's just that we should adapt a little bit what we did in the past. We should cooperate more. We should build better cooperation bridges inside Europe, outside Europe, mainly with the United States, but not only, and we'll be more successful in the area of innovation and research.
Question to you, Bruno, because we are running out of time. I think I'm right in saying, I heard Mariya at the beginning saying, in the sense I hope I'm not misrepresenting what she said, we should not be too concerned or agitated, if you like, exercised about technological sovereignty. And you kind of referred to towards the end of your own introductory remarks about there might be some kind of tension there when we're talking about digital sovereignty, etc., strategic autonomy, and so on and so on. Is there a danger there, or can we know with goodwill these kind of differences of approach be ironed out? If you can unmute Bruno.
I am unmute.
Now, perfect. We can hear you.
Okay. No, sorry. I was. Yeah. Do you hear me now? Yeah. No, I was saying, we live on the same planet. So clearly, what this pandemic has shown is the incredible interdependence between our various peoples, between our various regions, between probably the necessity to make sure that our different value system may ultimately be able to coexist. So yes, I do think that there is a possibility through, for instance, cooperative action on behalf of governments, industry, non-governmental organization. Consumers have a role to play. I think if we more and more, and I think this is the approach this commission is taking, if we enhance the capability of the public sector to listen to what industry needs to achieve competitiveness, and if industry accepts that there are rules here and that those rules need to be implemented, because what is important is to maximize the welfare and safeguard the rights of our citizens. I think there is a way through. You asked me at the beginning if I was optimistic.
Thank you, Bruno.
Yes,
we have to finish now because I think Cristian has to go off and chair a very important ITRE committee. Before that, I will, since daylight is dawning behind Don, I want to know whether you'd like to say a final word, Don, since you're now in daylight and we're going to go into the evening.
Thank you very much, Paul. I just want to again repeat that this has been a really stimulating and heartening discussion. I hope it continues. I'm happy to engage with each and every one of you to the extent I can help the discourse and discussions. And I want to commend you, Paul. I thought you did a spectacular good job.
It's a very difficult job.
This,
right. Well, thank you, everybody on the panel. And we at Forum Europe, we never take for granted your appearances. You're making yourselves available. You're all extremely busy people. So when you turn up, we are particularly grateful indeed for your time and your commitment and your support for what we're trying to do here. Thank you all very much. Thank you to the audience. And I hand back to my team. Thank you all. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Thank you so much. Bye.